Okay. And Desiree, feel free to start sharing your screen. We have only a couple more minutes. Welcome, everyone. Just to let you know, we're recording this session today, and you can find the closed captions on the bottom of the toolbar. Either you can see it right away, or you have to click on More, and there should be an option for you to click on Captions. Okay. And anybody, if you have questions, please feel free to type your questions in the chat. Oh, hi, Kevin. Nice to see you. Kevin, I just want to make sure I did the spotlight correctly. I tried to put it on Desiree, but I can't tell if it's working.
It was before. It seems to be off now. So you
Okay.
can just reapply it.
Yeah, okay. There's Desiree. There she is. Oh, something is happening. Desiree, if you could do me a favor and say something so then I can see you're lighting up in the sea of faces.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. And I'm sharing my screen. Do you see it by chance?
Yes, we can see it well.
Okay, great.
Okay, so welcome everyone. We will get started. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Desiree Green from Averett University. She will be presenting on adult learners, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi, yes, good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to be here. I am having just a little bit of trouble here, so I want to confirm that you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. I have two screens, so if you see me periodically look, that's what I'm doing so that I can control the presentation. Yes, again, I am Desiree Green. I'm going to discuss the importance of connecting andragogical principles and transformational leadership in the classroom for adult learners. But just before we jump into my presentation here, just a little bit of background on why I chose to research this and present it today. But we do live in more of an ever-changing society, especially now. And so successful methods are necessary to really help those adult learners absorb scholastic material, if you will. And so for clarity, an adult learner is going to be a non-traditional student or anyone that's over the age of 25. And so this type of instructor does understand the practical needs of each student, including, how to connect course content and work requirements to the environment, if you will. And so the instructor really is responsible for setting the learning conditions and creating more of a motivational foundation. And so doing this will help the adult learners to enhance and maintain and heighten their focus, but it also helps to increase their interest and retain their knowledge. And that's going to be important, right? And that's the importance of learning equity. And so these students already possess a vast array of knowledge from life, from employment, from different experiences that they have. But we really need to mesh those prior competencies with collegiate studies. And so since their needs are going to differ from the traditional students, instructors have to ensure that their teaching methods are modified, if you will, with the strategies that are tailored to meet those needs. And so doing that is going to create that learning equity. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go to my next slide. And so here's my agenda. I'll give you a brief bio of myself. I'll discuss the adult learner, the history of andragogy, transformational leadership, and then I'll make that innate connection. And so my presentation, in hopes that it will support how this type of connection is appropriate for knowledge retention and increased motivation. And so here's all about me. I received my DBA in 2021 from Walden University and my Master of Arts in 2017 from Webster University and my Bachelor of Science in 2010 from Norfolk State University. I am a current adjunct for both Averett University and Midlands Technical College. And I'm also an associate reviewer for the Journal of Doctoral Studies at Informing Science Institute. I am a proud Army veteran, previously serving as a senior human resources officer. I just retired in 2022, and I do have 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan. And let's go ahead and jump into it. So here we are, the history of andragogy. Now, andragogy is going to be more of a masculine trait, but the interpretation, the focus overall is on formal adult education for both genders, right? And so the German instructor, Alexandra Knapp, established that the overall concept, which was formalized in 1833, a very long time ago, through the incorporation of Plato writings. And, we all know how impactful Plato was, and a lot of his teachings we still utilize today. And so in the 1920s, the elite scholar Eugene Rosenstock Hesse determined that andragogy focused on fostering and developing adults through appropriate sensitivities, appropriate motivations, and that further established a connection in the scientific method for adult instruction and really that appropriate motivation for knowledge attainment. Now, he's credited with further developing the theory of adult education. And so then we get right into Malcolm Knowles, and I'm sure we've all heard of him, but he was an American scholar, an American adult educator, if you will, and he further advanced the concept of andragogy by determining 4 main factors. The first one being that adult learners have a very deep psychological need to be self-directed and included in their learning. They want to feel that collaboration piece, and so it's very important. And I'll touch on that later whenever I make the connection with transformational leadership in the classroom. The second is that they are performance-focused, performance-based. And so the overall learning experience should be competency-focused, competency-based with developmental stages. And staging it appropriately is going to help them to retain that knowledge and make the connection from A to Z. I need to learn this so that I can understand this. And it just helps to build on that knowledge block, and that helps with the knowledge retention. They as an adult learners, they already, I mentioned that they have the vast source of experience. So when you attach that to learning, that's going to create the passion, and it's going to enhance their problem solving abilities and create better critical thinking skills. And so instructors who make that connection understand that they have to modify the course content with real life tasks. We're getting into the practicality of the teaching and situations to really instill the need to know the material. And again, that's going to help with the knowledge retention. So we get into adult learners. Now, I did mention, they have to balance their educational goals with their other life requirements, employment, families, marathons, etc. And so I did mention that they are self-directed. So the instructor has to educate according to the appropriate learning theory and the appropriate teaching modality, if you will, to really bridge the gaps among the different learning styles. So what does that mean? It means you could teach one subject in varying ways to accommodate the differences in the learning comprehension, and that's going to create the equity in learning. Now, adult learners will heavily benefit from more organization, an organized structure that is going to include the theoretical and the practical viewpoints, getting into my first point on the slide. And so an effective strategy for educating them is creating content that's focused on practicality, theoretical viewpoints, and that's going to allow incorporation of data from lived experiences. And I do know personally, a lot of instructors will utilize social media and YouTube, even scholarly and peer-reviewed material to help understand this lived experience, and this is how we connect it to whatever topic that they're instructing. And so that's important because it's practical and it highlights practical skills. And so a high focus has to be placed on their subjective experiences to really gain, a better understanding of how they internalize the different situations. And doing this is really going to help highlight the appropriate institutional level factors that are necessary to really, academically influence, if you will, and motivate the adult learner. Now, I'll say that the non-traditional students face the same challenges as those enrolled in face-to-face programs. So we get into the adult learners versus the virtual adult learner. But the difference is that this population is going to struggle with the peer connection, and appropriate motivating leadership in the online platform. And so strategies to establish and enhance the instructor and adult learner relationship for that, to keep that motivation and enhance the learning, is going to be my other 3 points here. So the timely individualized feedback on assignment submissions, that's going to indicate that you're actually reading their work, you're guiding their learning with constructive guidance. And timely is important because you want to give them time to make any corrections before they make their next submission. So that's why I wanted to emphasize timely. And so being actively engaged in each discussion board is really just going to show your digital presence. And it shows that you are making a connection with them, understanding how they learn and how they respond to others, because again, that's going to help with the collaboration piece. And that's very important for adult learners, just to help them to feel connected in the online environment. And lastly, responding to inquiries within 24 hours is going to tell them that their concerns are a priority, and, you're here to assist in any way that you can. And so it's true that the online format, backed by research, can hinder effective instruction and learning, but that could impact the motivation overall. But the interpersonal interactions and that consistent counsel is going to mitigate those factors. They're going to feel support. And when you respond quickly to them, it lets them know that they are important and they're being heard. And so overall, these strategies are going to help the learners to, realize their potential, to create those intrinsic values, if you will, and to keep them motivated and really happy and eager to continue on their academic journey, and then get across that stage with their to the degree completion. And so the performance and the overall success really depend predominantly on that established support and the rapport that they have with the instructor. So again, you'll hear me say motivation a lot, but that plays a key role in the instruction. And so this type of professor who will implement the andragogical principles in the classroom is really better equipped to understand the adult learners' needs and how to engage them, how to motivate them, and, keep them wanting to continue and help with retention, if you will. And so that leads me into transformational leadership. And here we are. So just to give you some background, this term was first coined by James McGregor Burns in 1978. I'm actually a huge fan of his work because he highlights the traits concentrated on focusing, and increasing motivation through focus, if you will. And so the characteristics are going to be on the left side here. And inspirational motivation, it's going to focus on employing a deep passion for instruction to really influence adult learners' behaviors in a positive way. And intellectual stimulation is going to enhance the inducement of creativity and deep thinking while encouraging new perspectives. So helping with that critical thinking piece that I mentioned earlier, and individualized consideration is going to focus on developing a broader view of the material through direct and consistent feedback. And that will also help with the retention piece. And the last one is idealized influence, which is going to highlight reputable qualities of the instructor that establishes trust. The adult learner does need to have a level of trust and respect for the instructor, because that will help them to pay more attention and help to build that solid core. So I wanted to make sure that I emphasize the importance of establishing trust. And so an instructor who adopts the transformational leadership style is focused on, positive principles that work toward the desired end state, which is graduation, and knowledge retention, of course, but that means, increasing comprehension and retaining knowledge. And so these instructors will produce positive results, and it has a favorable effect on adult learner retention rates because of the direct emphasis on their needs. So you understand how they learn, what they need, and that means you have a rapport with them. So a transformational leader will be better, more effective, just to help the the students learn better. And so the depicted traits are going to emphasize that although each one has their own definitive meaning and it's interconnected, it's still imperative to sync the motivating factors for the desired academic, desired transforming result. And so basically what I mean by that is that although there are four and they all have separate meanings, one does not hold more weight than the other. You need all four to create a well-rounded view of the overall concept that Burns wanted us to learn. And so the transformational instructor is going to operate more of a change agent, and they're going to effectively inspire and influence their students by not only prioritizing their needs, but accommodating their learning styles and providing that consistent counsel and the guidance and the feedback and giving that direct engagement. And so this is going to increase the collegiate interest, reduce adult learner poor retention, and really enhance the motivation, which is a critical component for instructing the adults. And now I will go ahead and make the connection. So this slide here is really the foundation of my presentation today. So a transformational instructor who applies andragogical methods to teach adult learners will understand the advantages of accommodating and catering to their comprehension and their learning requirements. And so I did mention before that these learners are self-directed. So since they are self-directed, you have to demonstrate the willingness to modify instruction for them to enhance their understanding and their overall understanding of the course content, if you will. And that's where you get into that creativity of bringing in outside resources to enhance the practicality of what it is that you need them to learn, the overall learning objective. And so that will leave the adult learners more focused on the effective engagement and increased motivation, but it enhances their focus, basically. And so the transformational instructor is, they're visualizers. They're going to project, look for the future outcomes and strategies and different methods to help them accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, to foster a supportive and motivating environment that's going to promote consideration towards the positive changes in their perspectives. It's going to also influence the intellect. And so I actually created the adult learner metrics just to demonstrate the overall connection between Malcolm Knowles' andragogical principles, which are going to be on the outer circle, and the correlating transformational leadership traits by Burns, which is going to be on the inner circle. And so the four key objectives are going to combine the leadership and andragogical methods, but the four key objectives are actually listed here. So when we get into facilitation versus pontification, think of a transformational instructor will raise questions that are thought-provoking, and they require intentional reasoning to increase engagement, right? And so the instructor is more of a guiding facilitator who focuses on improving learners' independence and associating new knowledge with current and past experiences, creating that connection again to help them retain the material, understand it better, and then retain the material. And this is going to relate to the intellectual stimulating trait of transformational leadership because of the requirement to encourage profound scholarly thinking, if you will. And so getting into the next point, applying real life application, a transformational instructor will incorporate additional content from external sources for practical exercises. So again, the peer review, the scholarly, the YouTube, and even social media, because some of that is helpful just to create that practicality. And so the content is familiar to the adult learner, and it's associated with the adult learner's professional environment, because again, we're connecting the work to their employment, the course content to the employment, just to help create a need to know, and this is why you need to know this, and this is how it's going to help you in the future. And so creating that familiar link is going to increase the comprehension, and it will also enhance the knowledge retention. And so you can do this by learning the strengths and weaknesses of your adult learner and their background. So listening to them is very important. And I will say you learn a lot just the first day of class. Before you get into your syllabus, you go over, let's do a brief intro. This is who I am, have them introduce themselves. And people will tell you a lot about themselves in a few sentences, but it will help you to start to learn who they are and learn how to engage them appropriately. And so this is going to relate to individualized consideration because of the high level of idiosyncratic engagement that's necessary to understand the adult learner's needs. And so when we get into the collaborative environment, a transformational instructor creates more of an interactive environment that requires, high levels of engagement. And so this is going to reduce the tension, because going back to school can be tough as an adult learner. So it's going to reduce the tension. It will allow for collective learning by sharing the varying perspectives and opportunities to resolve those problems. And so that will help enhance their critical thinking. And so in order for the instructor to accomplish this, they must appeal to the emotions of the adult learners through trust, through transparency, through moral character. And those are traits in the idealized influence. And so when we get into the learner-centered technique, a transformational instructor modifies the teaching methods and the teaching modalities, the course content, and the objectives to really meet adult learners' academically motivated needs. And this will allow the learners to align their scholarly pace better and to develop a deeper passion for the learning. And so this technique is going to positively affect their performance through the inspirational motivation, which is the final transformational leadership trait that you see here. And I will say a combination of all of these methods have to occur to create that critical thinker. And, adult learners do require educational practices that are in opposition to the traditional pedagogical strategies, because they have a noticeable deviation from those tactics. And the reason being is because their motivational needs are not met. So you have to teach them differently than you would teach, for instance, K through 12, right? K through 12 is a little different. They're more, I don't want to say needy, but they rely on the instructor a little more. Adult learners rely on them, but they want them to make a connection to why they need to know this information for later on. K through 12 is a little more receptive. 1 + 1 is 2, that's it. An adult learner, they may dig a little bit deeper into that. And sometimes children can do it too, but there's very big differences between the pedagogical and the andragogical strategies. And so I just wanted to highlight that. But I also want to highlight that you have to understand the economic status and the socio-cultural challenges when you're doing, your lesson planning, or when you're creating an assignment, or when you're even guiding a discussion, because that will help to have a deep understanding of their developmental needs. And so all practices for adult learners must be learner-centered, because the techniques will facilitate the learning. It's going to highlight relatable real life practices and really promote that collaboration piece. And so basically learning and understanding the strengths and weaknesses, but learning your student. And you do that through effective engagement. That's necessary because the adult learners have to feel connected. And if they don't, you can lose them, and that will create poor retention. So it's being consistent and being authentic, and adult learners will typically appreciate that. I want to reiterate the importance of accommodating the individual learning styles, because that will really inspire a deep and critical reflection um, of their learned and their established beliefs, and it's going to challenge perspectives. So I mentioned before that adult learners arrive to the classroom with knowledge already, but whenever you challenge something that they already know, it's going to broaden their view. It's going to give them a deeper understanding of whatever the focus is that you're talking about, and it will help them to retain knowledge because they're learning something different. I always thought it was A, but now I'm learning it's B, and it helps to enhance their knowledge and again promote that critical thinking piece, and help them to generate new knowledge as well. And so I will state that, any adult learner with a transformational instructor will have higher rates of cognitive learning, better emotional intelligence and communication skills. And again, they will become much better critical thinkers. And so we're actually at the end of my presentation. I hope that there was some real value in my methods and suggestions. This is backed by extensive research. I do encourage you to discover your leadership style or become a transformational leader, because that's going to carry over into the classroom, and understanding your style will help you to understand how to properly engage with your students and creating that connection. So this is my contact information. And if you do desire to read my publication, it's on the bottom of the screen, Adult Learners Connecting Andragogy and Transformational Leadership in the Classroom. I do appreciate your ears. Thank you so much. And I now invite the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green.
Sure.
And anybody, feel free to type your questions in the chat. And also, if you for some reason have to go, I will put information on how you can connect with the conference in the chat as well. And you're also welcome to use the question and answer feature.
Absolutely. I do see some notes here. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the support. Thank you so much.
Here's a question for you, Dr. Green. Any ideas about how this works with second language learners?
Oh, yes, it will easily translate. There is really no difference. It's just understanding that there may be some difference in the interpretations of certain dialects. So, making sure that you're teaching and you're speaking in a way that is easily translatable, but the material is going to effectively translate to any person, any adult learner.
Mm-hmm. Yes, emphasizing connection seems to work always. Yeah. There's
Yes.
more questions coming in. Here's from Terrence. He says, hi, I'm an instructional designer and grad student in an adult and higher ed program. How does transformational leadership intersect with transformational learning theory from Jack Meziroff?
Yes. So I will state this. I am not a an expert on Jack's theories, so that would be a little difficult to answer. But I will say with Burns, it's going to be those, those 4 traits that I mentioned before. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but it's going to be those 4, traits, the individualized consideration, etc. But I'm not an expert on Jack. So unfortunately, I cannot give you a solid answer to that question.
And there's a question about sharing links to the literature, maybe just even the name of the author in the book, or...
Is this my presentation or
Yes.
the,
Oh,
okay, yes.
Melissa is asking, can you provide the link to the literature? I'm not sure.
Or Melissa, are you referring to my article that I wrote or to Burns material?
We'll see. She's...
Okay, yes, I can provide that link.
Yeah, article, yes. And then another question, any place you recommend for more training in transformational leadership?
That's a great question. There's not a lot of conferences that focus on transformational leadership, unfortunately, but I will say James McGregor Burns he has a lot of books that are available through, you can pull them up on the internet and read the full content of it. But I will start with him.
Okay.
I can put his name in the chat. But as far as learning more on training, unfortunately, no. I wish they had conferences. I would sign up for every single one. I'm a huge fan of his work.
Okay. Right. Thank you. These are great questions. Thank you. Keep them coming, and thank you for your sharing your expertise, Dr. Green.
Anytime.
And as everybody, I put links to how to stay connected or also find the program for the equity conference in the chat as well. Here's a new message. Oh yeah, you put that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I will copy this too. Are there any other questions? Here. I teach filmmaking, so it's very interactive, but I know there's often a wide difference in technical knowledge. Any ideas for making that feel less intimidating as both online and in-person instructors?
I would say not for film specifically, but just to decrease the tension in the classroom is just creating more of a collaborative environment with the students, allowing them to speak, paying attention. Sometimes people have the facial expressions of, I'm completely lost. So just allowing that collaboration piece. But that's going to be for any subject, not specifically for film, but it will help decrease the tension, which I think translate over into any subject.
And lots of appreciation for you as well in the chat. Okay, thank you everybody for attending. I hope that you can find other sessions and continue to engage. And thank you, Dr. Green. I will stay around if anybody would like to also stay. I'm here. I think we ended a little early, but here's a lot of thanking you. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, does the Zoom room just stay open? Yes, it does. The room stays open. You can just come back. We won't close the session. Yes, I loved it too, Dr. Green. I work with a lot of adult learners and can confirm connection is everything. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Whether it's in person or online, it's very important. I love to see the transition when you give feedback and on the next assignment it's implemented. That's it's very profound. I like to see that. But it
Yeah.
lets you know that they pay attention to everything that you write when it's online, and then in person, everything that you say.
Yeah, yes, I also as an adult learner, I also appreciate, like you said, the feedback, getting a response is for some reason, even if you know that everybody's very busy, it matters. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you packed a lot in a short time.
I did. I was hoping it wouldn't be too overwhelming.
No, it was perfect, and I just had listened to another presentation before where they were talking about cognitive overload, and to avoid that, and I did not feel overloaded. So.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm the staff development officer with Chelsea Cohen over at Laney at Peralta, and we may contact you about doing a flex presentation in the fall if you're open to that, because I think it's really good material, and uh, you could even present more because they're 50-minute sessions. But I
Okay.
think this is really great material, and both online and in person, we talk about these things, but we need to be reminded. And I recommend every teacher, every professor take an online course from another professor, so you can see what works and does not work for yourself. Because I know what does not work for me, and definitely not getting responses, not feeling respected. Also, like intellectually, like almost taking the material to very low level. I'm like, oh, not low level, like high school level, or
Yeah.
I'm like, come on now, we're here now. Let's move it forward. Or having so much material in the online course to read that you there's no way. I had to comment to one woman who I was taking this class in climate stuff, and I was like, first of all, I am not a scientist, and this is an intro class to this, so I'm like, this is so much material. I don't think anybody's going to be able to keep up with you. And so she did. She responded, and she lightened the load a little bit. So I thought that was great.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Is
Working adults and or people with kids or whatever, like, oh my God, it was so much reading. But if you don't take classes with other people, you don't quite kind of get how to gauge your own online, the